Now back to Unnecessary Roughness with your boy Q on Raider Nation Radio 920 AM.
Been having a lot of fun today talking about beef. This all comes from Kendrick Lamar dropping the Euphoria track, a little diss towards Drake. I kind of think that the diss tracks in hip-hop these days aren't what they used to be, like that beat you just heard coming in, Hit 'Em Up. That was one of the hardest ones ever as far as I'm concerned. The beefs aren't quite like that anymore, but as we had the caller earlier say, yeah, but they ain't trying to kill each other these days either like it was back in the day. Got to bring in my guy, my brother, man, a guy that I came up with in the game going all the way back to Wild 94.9. He knows about beef, not between us, but between hip-hop artists. That's my guy, E-Rock, DJ E-Rock. E-Rock, it's been a minute, my man. How you doing?
Man, I am good. Can you hear me? Can you
yes,
hear me
sir.
okay over there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear, my man. I definitely appreciate you joining the show. And, we started off the whole show talking about beef in sports because of what Kendrick did with Drake, and it was a big topic of discussion. But, I mean, you come from the grassroots, man. You're from the hip-hop world just like I am. What have you thought about the beef that used to be compared to what beef is now?
I mean, I heard your comment about, like, how beefs aren't what they are today or what they were back in the day. And I think that's a good thing because just like, one of your callers said, like, those beefs back then were really, really crazy. Like sometimes you couldn't be in the same room with both of these people. Like you don't know if those things were going to jump off. You didn't know if anything was going to jump off or anything, man. But I mean, to be honest, I'm going to just put it out there. This is my 2 cents is that I think it's a lot of theater. I think it's just like, it's good competition. You know what I mean? I don't foresee Drake and Kendrick, getting at each other, backstage at a summer jam or whatnot, but, it's a show. You know what I mean? But hey, you know what? Rap needed a show. You know what I mean? To be honest, we saw one of those stats not too long ago that there was no top 10 record on Billboard in hip hop at all. Or something like that, or there was so many records that came out, but none of them ever charted, or something. Right. I mean, a couple. Obviously, Drake, did his thing, Kendrick did his thing, whatever. Metro Boomin, Future, but there was so many records in rap that just came out, didn't chart, whichever, didn't move the needle. But this is finally moving the needle for hip hop as a whole. I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Again, DJ E-Rock is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. And E-Rock, you've been doing so many big things, and you were doing big things back at Wild 94.9 when I was part of the party crew, just starting to come up and trying to learn my way in this business. And I think we both come a long way. But Radio Basement, Real 92.3 LA, you're obviously spinning tracks in the clubs here in Vegas, man, and the sports scene. You're part of that with the 49ers, spinning tracks for the 49ers. How huge is this sports scene right now in Vegas?
Man, it's great. It's actually one of the reasons, how I ended up here. It's a beautiful thing to see, the local fabric really come together in Vegas and through the lens of sports. I mean, obviously with the Golden Knights, being as successful as they are, with the Raiders, obviously being as successful as they are, Allegiant's one of the most top grossing, profitable stadiums in the NFL right now. On top of that, the A's coming here. We're in the talks about having an NBA team. It's so amazing to see what sports does to a community, and it's even better to see a lot of these teams start to win. You know what I mean? Once the championship starts to arrive and everything, everything. It's just great for the city in general. And obviously, my career really took off here in Vegas. From the Bay Area, spent some good time in LA, about close to a decade, but I've been here for the last 2 years. Seeing everything that we had in the Bay Area with, the Giants doing even year magic and, how people felt afterwards, winning the championship. And now seeing that happen here in Vegas, it's beautiful to see transpire and really, like I said, brings the community together in a whole different light. And I've never seen that in the last, I've been playing on the Strip for maybe 15 years now.
Right.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah, man, you've had longevity in the game. I tell the stories all the time here about, like I said, us coming up and being in the club and me throwing out prizes for you while you're mixing or whatever the case may be. Or, it's wild that we're where we are. How much have you seen the game really evolve, though, man? Just from, like I said, where we were back at Wild to where we are right now.
I mean, it's definitely a different type of game. Like, I've had to evolve and pivot, many times, and figure out how to attain that longevity. I mean, to be an entertainer on the Strip, and have multiple residencies. I've had my own night named after me at a casino, at Light Nightclub. I was there for maybe about a good 8 years doing Year Off Fridays. But a lot of it, was just really just making sure that we were always ahead of the game. We were always doing, what was the most fashion-forward thing to be, to chase relevance, pretty much. That was that's the hardest thing to do is to, to stay relevant. And it gets harder and harder and harder. Back in the day when we were on Wild, we didn't have social media. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have, anything, we didn't have X, or Twitter, whatever we call it today, but we just had to be on the radio and then people would show up. The radio was our social media, you know what I'm saying? But, now it's to be a DJ, not only do you got to be a good DJ, you have to have all these, multiple layers. You got to be like an onion, and the thicker that these layers are, the more engaging you are to your audience, but it's a totally different game. It's evolved, it still is evolving. It's hard to keep up with, but hey, I'm built for it. I'm ready for whatever the world brings.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, man. You've been built from it since day one. I always tell the stories about when 40 was really blowing up and you had to tell me when to go, and you shot me. I was at Q97. You shot me that You and That before anybody, right? I had that track. I was battling with B95, and you're like, here you go, Q. And I went and told my guy, I was like, hey, go play this right now. And little did I know it was a dirty version, but you sent it to me ahead of time, and I was like, oh.
My bad, man. My bad. I just, might have been the excitement, So.
Hey, it was the excitement for me to get it on the radio, and I was like, oh, I learned that day that you need to actually listen to it before you put it on, but because you told me it was fire and I need to play it, I knew immediately. I was like, oh, this is a track. This is a banger. E-Rock said it's a banger. It's a banger. So that's how we used to roll, though. You know that.
Yeah, it's so different now, with streaming and, records debut on, YouTube. You know what I mean? Or even on Spotify and stuff like that. Back in the day, I used to be in the studio, with an artist like 40, and I would get the record from the studio and in its raw form, send it out to the network, people like yourself, to get on the radio. It's just no longer like that no more, man. But, it's all good though. I mean, with everything that we're seeing right now, with the disc record thing, my whole entire thing is I know it's a show. More than anything, but it's still good because people there's a lot of eyes on hip hop right now, So coming from hip hop, that's a big deal to me,
Yeah, no, it really is. And so I turned this whole conversation about beef and hip hop to beef and sports. And again, I know that you're spinning the tracks for the 49ers. You're doing a fantastic job. Who did you have beef with, man? Who was a sports person that you just kind of had beef with, whether it was just because they always played really well against your team or you just couldn't stand that person?
Man, I don't know. That's a tough one. Because, man, to be honest,
I have beef still with Terrell Suggs because he tried to hit on Mama Q in New Orleans when the Niners were playing the Ravens at the Super Bowl. So until I go to my grave, I'm always going to have beef with Terrell Suggs. So that's one for me. LaDainian Tomlinson always used to beat the brakes off the Raiders all the time. So he was one guy that, in a respectful way, I had beef with him because he was just so dominant.
Man, when it came to sports, there's this one situation that always comes to mind. It's probably the only situation. And I always believe that, if you're a good person before a good DJ, you can get far in this business more than anything. So that's, been my whole mantra, which is why I'm having a hard time trying to pick which beef, is the thing that stands out. But I remember playing at a club called Hayes. And I kept on having this group of people coming up to me telling me to change the music. And, at that time, hip hop wasn't really that big on the Strip. There weren't a lot of options. Dre's wasn't around yet. There weren't a lot of hip hop performers, and whatnot. It was like when the town was going through its electronic dance music boom, right? But I kept on getting this group of people heckling me from the table behind. And I'm like, yo, these guys are really trying to get under my skin, and they're just like, yo, man, what is this? And I was like, yo, this this is getting too much, man. Sure enough, I said something, again, argument with somebody. It was a long time ago. It wasn't an argument, but, sure enough, like I think in Page 6 or something like that, it was like one of them tabloid newspapers. There was an article about RG3 at his bachelor party at Hayes, and the DJ wasn't playing music that he wanted, so he walked out. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I didn't even know it was RG3. But at the same time, I was like, yo, like, and so I think, like, when it comes down to, like, sports beats, that was, like, the only thing, because I was pretty upset. That was, like, my first, like bad piece of press ever.
Yeah.
It's probably the only bad piece of press, It's just like, yo, it looks like I'm not doing my job. And so I went on Twitter and had a couple things to say and this and that. But, I mean, obviously, it's, nothing now. I mean, that was over a decade plus ago. So,
right.
That's
awesome.
I think, RG3 didn't like the way I was DJing, and he walked out. And, I have no idea how that got into the press, but it did.
That is too funny. That's hilarious. I covered RG3 when he was at Baylor, so like I know him really well, and I could see that. Just from knowing him, I could see that being his kind of get down, especially at that time, right, when he was getting married.
At that time, it was before the injuries and everything. Like he had just got drafted, so he was the guy. You know what I mean? So. You know what? I probably could have done my job a little bit better, but at the same time, I was, I was so new to Vegas, man. It's not like I was going in there and, I had like a stuck up attitude. I was just doing what I was told to do, and I never veered from the path. So
that's funny. Hey, man, that's how it be sometimes, man. You can't please everybody all the time, but funny that your only piece of bad press happened to come off the strength of RG3 walking out of the club because he didn't like the music. That is too funny.
Hey, I see RG3 now, it's all good, man. It is all good, man. I'm a big fan of how he commentates on television. It's all good,
Yeah.
I was a young sprite in the game back then, so, I didn't have thick skin either, so obviously, like, something like that would, it riled me up, but it didn't rile. I mean, it won't rile me up now. I mean, things happen all the time, like, in these nightclubs.
Hey, you know how it is, man. We from the Bay. We cut a little different, man. You know how it go. We cut a little different, man. You know how it gets down. Well, what are you working on, man? What you got coming up? I know you're in the clubs. You're doing everything. I check you out on social media all the time. We got to catch up in person. But what you got going on that we should check out?
Man, I'm still doing my thing. Actually, what's really crazy is that I'm getting married in about a good 10 days or so.
Oh wow!
So
Congrats.
that's something that's consuming a lot of my time, and it's I'm really looking forward to that. But outside of that, still traveling, still doing my thing on the Vegas Strip. Calgary properties. We'll play at Live every now and then. Daylight. Stuff like that. On top of that, obviously still on the radio from LA to the Bay to Phoenix, to here in Vegas, still got the radio basement thing going on. But, I do have a couple other things that I'll probably be able to talk about come July.
Okay.
I'm super excited. I'll tell you off the air for sure what we're working on. But aside to that, getting ready for, another, season of 49er football. And this is actually going to be my 10th season with the team. So,
that's awesome.
Still, providing the soundtrack in the stadium with, my group called the AM Squad, which I founded a good 10 years ago. We're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary, of having DJs, in the bowl per se. So,
that's awesome.
Got a lot of great things, But, starting a family and getting married, that's number one on the agenda right now. So,
hey, man, good things happen to great people, and you've always been great people from day one. So, man, I'm so happy for you, all your success, man. And I'll say this. I got a question, though. Who DJs a DJ's wedding?
You know what, man? To be honest, I don't know yet. That's the number one thing that I've been kind of stuck on. I haven't – I'm going to have a ton of DJs there, so it's not like we're going to have a shortage.
Right.
Of people that can do the job. But, people have asked me, yo, so who's DJing? I was like, I don't know. Maybe it might be an open deck setup. Hey, yo, do you want to hop on? Hop on. You know what I mean? So
that'll be like a mixed show weekend where it's just everyone takes a rotation.
This guy said that my wedding is going to be a mixed show weekend. My man. Oh, man.
Commercial
man.
free. Commercial free all weekend long.
Free.
I love it.
Jana, the most hip hop and R&B.
There it is.
Ready. Let's go.
There it is. E-Rock, man, great stuff. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes. Congratulations on the family and the wedding coming up. And like I said, we got to catch up in person soon.
Absolutely, man. Also, man, I want to give a shout out to you, man. I see all the great things that you're doing. You know what I mean? And yo, Raider Nation, if you're listening right now, I know I am a 49er, but hey, I got a lot of love for this city in Vegas, man. So when you guys win, I feel like I win too because, hey, I live here. This city changed my life. It changed my life. So any way that Vegas could be on top, I'm for it. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
There it is. Great stuff. E-Rock, we'll catch up soon, brother.
No doubt.